Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And today, a special episode. It's part of a roundtable the other day with Jean-Claude of Beyond Mystic and also David Morgan and Bix Weir. So a lot of fun silver talk. And Jean-Claude has kindly allowed us to repost this, which we'll be sharing today. We're changing the schedule up a little bit. Sundays will not always be Dave Kranzler Day anymore. But today we have this, which we will call a bonus episode, and I think you will enjoy. So here you go.
Hello, everyone. Beyond Mystic, and welcome to the second episode of the Silver Roundtable. Today we have three fabulous guests, and the first one, let me introduce them one by one. But the first one is, of course, the original, Silver Guru. He's the author of the Silver Manifesto, and you can find his work at the Silver Report.
Silver Guru. He's the author of the.
I think one of you has the YouTube live chat on, guys.
Silver Report.
We're getting an echo from another window. No?
Yeah, we are. We're getting.
I think it's gone now.
Gone now.
Okay. Well, let me finish with that. Of course, you can find his work at themorganreport.com. Let's give him a big warm welcome. David Morgan, how are you today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm really excited to have you. And as I was saying in the pre-interview, I found you about 10 years ago, and I was looking through YouTube, the archives, to find my first video of you, and it was called the 10 Rules for Silver Investing. So it just shows you how long you've been at this, and even longer. But anyways, that's pretty much when I found you. So thank you for being on the show. Next up, Chris. Chris is the author of The Big Silver Short. You can find his work at arcadiaeconomics.com. Let's give him a big warm welcome. Chris Marcus, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me back. Really a pleasure to be on with all the four of us. And I'll echo what you said about David Morgan. He was a big influence. You got me hooked along the way there, David. So it's partly all your fault.
We'll get into that, because I'm sure a lot of my viewers have that same arc of waking up and understanding the markets and then getting into precious metals. And of course, David Morgan is a big part of the awakening process for a lot of us out here. So we'll get into that. But Chris, before I move on to introducing Bix, you have a special event coming up. Why don't we touch that right now, and we'll also get back into it at the end of the show. But let's give a little quick preview to the folks of this event you're having on.
Sure. Well, I was realizing, if there's any industry that's overdue to have some sort of fun celebration of the positives of silver. I mean, we've all taken the beating over the last 9 years. We've all had our days where we're kicking and swearing, and I think we actually started scheduling this before silver broke $20, but even more exciting, we finally have the rally. So Silverfest will be held September 11th through 13th. It's going to be online this year, but I'm quite grateful. It's all these different people I've met through the book and my show. David's going to be a big part of it. Bix is going to be speaking about whether JP Morgan should still be trading in gold and silver as they're charged with the RICO Act. Jean-Claude, hopefully we'll get you on board as well. For anyone who's invested in silver, I mean, certainly a lot of great speakers and information, but also a chance to meet other people, which I think is the big part. I know a lot of people often feel like they're alone and they don't know who to talk to this stuff about. So come on in. It's free to attend, and it's going to be a lot of fun too.
Thank you so much, Chris. And as I told you in the last show, you have impeccable timing. First, you've got this new book coming out as silver is just about to rocket to the moon. And of course, this Silverfest is a great opportunity for people who are like-minded to get on board and get to know each other. So thank you, Chris, for being on. And last but not least, Bix Weir from roadtorootr.com. Bix is the guy. He's the crypto warrior. He's the psychic silver knight as of late, or silver cavalry as of late. Let's give him a big welcome, Chris. Bix, how are you today?
I'm excellent. I'm excited about this next month in silver and the months following. And I would love to see a freely traded silver market once in mankind's history. Well, at least like 150 years. So yes, I'm doing very well. I'm excited.
Well, thank you for being here, Bix. I always love it when you're on the show, and thank you so much for all the support you've given me since I started this channel. And I see Amy Weir down there, and I see Bix. You're slimming by the day. What's going on here? Are you on another boot cleanse?
I am,
baby. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I'm on day 8 or 9 of the Raw 21 reboot. Amy's thing she put together for Road to Ruta members or anybody really. Just go to Raw 21 reboot. And it's a 21-day cleanse, raw food. That's all you're just eating real food. You just don't cook it. And I drop weight like it's going out of style, which is great for old guys like me.
There you go. Silver, Full of Hope says, "Pay me my silver now." Yes, that's a great song. So, Amy, if you want to put in that link in the live chat, you're more than welcome to do so, and hopefully some people can join your cause. Folks, okay, so for the people on YouTube, thank you so much for being here live with us today. This is an interactive show. We are going to take your comments and your questions. We're going to ask you to maybe hold off a little bit more towards the half end of the show to start asking questions. So the format is going to be very similar to the first roundtable, where I'm going to ask each and every guest to lay out their position in terms of their research and their understanding of what's happening right now in the silver market. From there, I'm going to queue them up on a few questions that I've already received via email from some of the viewers. And then, of course, we'll open it up to the viewers. So I'd like to start with you, David. You're new on the show today. Thank you again for being on. And as I said earlier, man, you are part of a lot of people's awakening process in terms of real money, precious metals. For me, like I said, it was around 2011, I think, when I first saw you on YouTube. It was you, it was Chris Duane, and it was The Hidden Secrets of Money with what's his name?
Mike Maloney.
Mike Maloney, yeah. So you guys are rock stars in my book. So thank you so much, Dave, for being on and for all the work that you've done over the years. I mean, you've done a great service to humanity. And I wanted to say that for the record here on the show. So as we get started, Dave, give us I saw your interview on Greg Hunter last week or 2 weeks ago, and you were explaining a little bit your latest position and understanding of what's going on in the market. So let's lay it out a little bit here. I'll give you carte blanche and some time to set it up here in terms of what you think is happening on the silver market right now and where things are going maybe in the next couple of months. Let's start with that a little bit.
Okay, well, it's funny. Greg Hunter actually had asked me if I wanted to do an interview. It was about due to do one. And I told him, Greg, I really don't even want to get on here until we break 1950. I go, once that happens, then it's going to be worth talking about. I didn't say it's going to 30. I just said once it's above 1950, that's a technically important area. Well, I didn't know when I made that statement. It's going to be like 7 trading days later. It went. And boy, did it go. And so what's taken place? I mean, going back in time, if we look at those 9 years that Chris outlined, I mean, a lot of silver the last few years basically went to the buyer of last resort. No one wants to buy it at, 13, 14, 15, it seems. So a lot of it just got stacked on the shelves because for every buyer, there has to be a seller, even in the physical market. And so once silver caught that bid above, 20, we'll call it, then all of a sudden it's such a small market, a lot of money moved into silver. So the supply is definitely tight. There's definitely been physical demand. The amount of physical demand hasn't necessarily changed the warehouse inventories, but the ownership has changed. And that's easily verifiable by the amount of silver that's been stopped and recategorized from the eligible category to the registered. Now, I'm probably talking over everybody's head, and I don't mean to, but you asked me for my analysis, so I'm giving it to you. Now, what has concerned me somewhat is what I wrote in the Silver Manifesto. I dedicated a few chapters explaining the manipulation. And if you look at the ETFs as a legal eagle, a real scholar, and you look at each word, and each word at law means something, then they're able to take a what's called a warrant, which is a registered category receipt, and count that as physical. But we all know that when you get a ticket on the side of the road and a notice to appear, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to appear. It's a piece of paper that's notifying you something. So a bit of fear. I don't want to get everyone upset in the silver community, but I am leery of the ETFs generally, but I want to be consistent because I do have a membership service. And what I've said to them, and I've said in the public, is if and only if you have a physical supply of metals that you are comfortable with the amount, then as far as I'm concerned, if you want to do the ETFs as a hedge, or you want to do it for trading, or you want to swap them or whatever, I'm okay with that. But if you think an ETF is a way to go with your physical silver holdings, I would suggest you think again, with a couple of exceptions in cases where it might be extremely prohibitive with VAT or whatever. If you go into some that I consider to be holding companies, such as the PSLV, and a couple others, that'd be probably the best choice you could make under given conditions. So where are we going to go? I think we're going to be in a trading range for a while. Bix probably has a different view, and that's what makes these forums so interesting. I think we're going to see 25, 30, 30, 25, 25, 30 type of thing, and the same thing with gold. I think we're going to go sideways more or less for a while, and then something's going to happen in the market, or a combination. We could have a financial problem, a banking problem, a bullion bank that can't deliver, who knows? But another black swan other than this CV19-ish thing. And then we're going to see the market go further. So we need to usually bull markets go up and then sideways, then up, then sideways, then up and sideways, kind of climb a ladder. Then it's the wall of worry. And we'll get worry if silver only goes as high as 30 for the next month or 2 or 3, which I don't think it'll be 3, but time will tell. That's where I am presently, subject to change. I'll say it for the 1,000th time. The market knows more than me, Bix, Chris, or anybody.
Yeah, like what was that guy George said? It's a big club and we ain't in it. So we're not in the secrets of the gods here. We're just trying to decipher all the tea leaves. So thank you for that, David. And in your last interview too, you said something that struck my ear. You said we're entering the great silver crisis. What did you mean by that? And what do you expect the timing is? Where are we on this timeline?
Well, timing's always hard. And, I've probably been beat up, maybe justifiably so. But so the great silver crisis is when the industrial side comes to the realization that it's just not just-in-time inventory, and you could call up the logistics department and get silver on your production floor in a matter of a couple of weeks. That's what I'm saying. So what that means is that all the investment side, which we've seen come through magnificently the last few months, really only a matter of weeks, really, that's taken silver from 20 to 30 and back down to about 27, that isn't going away. And any new buying is going to drive it higher. So the physical supply is being locked up. And people that are in the industrial side, the silver users, you can look it up on the internet who the main ones are, but your big electronics places, your Dow Chemicals, your DuPonts, your Mitsubishis, your electronic firms, they need silver for production. Yes, even in this crisis, they're still going to produce products. So when they go to buy and find out what the investment side already knows, that, yeah, you can have your silver, except you got to wait 4 weeks or 6 weeks. That could cause a problem with one of them that spills over into many of them. Because once that's established and an industrial user has to secure silver, if they're thinking at all, they'll think ahead and say, you know what, we usually just buy, 2 weeks out. We've got to wait 6. I'm going to buy more silver so we don't have to stop our production. Well, that's going to tighten the supply even more, which means that the next industrial user has the same thought process. So that's going to piggyback. So silver is unique from the aspect of, unlike gold, it's got 2 actual demands. One is a steady demand. That's 60% of the market, which is obviously substantial, but not enough like the palladium market to take the price so high that you're not going to get any relief, because just the demand alone is going to keep it at very high prices. On the silver side, the 10, 15% of the market currently of investment, most people are looking for an exit. They want a profit at X amount of fiat, or whatever it buys equivalent. Like I like the ratios for how many cars does it buy, how much land does it buy, how many houses does it buy, that type of thing. but that is going to be a sell at some point, whereas palladium is pretty much all industrial. So that's why I think the dynamics of those two markets will be different than what some people have suggested, that, you know, once it gets to a certain level, it's going to stay there. I'd love to say yes to that, but I doubt it.
Very good. Thank you. A few housekeeping notes. One, I just had a brownout here. There's a thunderstorm and lightning. So if I lose connection, this live stream will continue. So I'll ask Bix to just hold the show for a minute or two as I reboot and come back on, just in case I do lose connection or power intermittently here. And also, there's a super chat on here right now from Josh. And Josh was asking about, hey, you guys are all rock star. Yes, I agree. Thank you so much for that. And he says, can you speak about confiscation? Yes, but we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. But I won't forget, I wrote it down, Josh. We'll get to that in a bit. So going back to my guests here, Bix, why don't you lay out, in your video this morning, you talked about the fact in the last couple of days too, that we're heading into this last week here of trading before this huge delivery. What's going on with that? What's new on the market here? And what's pushing your tingly or spidey senses here to tell us that something is coming up really quick here on the market?
I wouldn't say it's me, my analysis. I'd say Ted Butler has nailed this thing all year, that he believes that JP Morgan made a deal with the DOJ and the CFTC, although the CFTC does what the DOJ says it needs to do, basically to shut down their game, their rigging position, along with other large players. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing the large commercials close out shorts at a loss, which is unheard of. They've never done that before. And probably since the Comex was invented back in the early 70s. This just doesn't happen this way. So that is a huge red flag. Also, the deliveries last month were off the charts. 80 million ounces, only once. It never came close. I think it was 50 million ounces when the Hunt brothers finally, the government pulled the plug on the Hunt brothers in the 80s. But 80 million ounces last month in July. And right now we're sitting, I think the open interest for the September or for the August contract is about 60,000 contracts. And that's like off the charts. July was 17,000. So we only have 4 days left in this trading game, and then September is a delivery month, and I'm looking for over 20,000 contracts to be delivered, which is over 100 million ounces of physical silver. But is it really being delivered? This is where we get to the conspiracy. And who's it being delivered to? If JP Morgan is delivering to Citibank and to Bank of America to put into the SLV to continue the price rigging job of the big banks and pretend that they're only in this game for hedging for clients, like Blythe Master says, then we got, game on still. If it is what I think it is and what Ted seems to think it is the big players looking for a way out of this huge manipulative short position, that's a different deal. And that's what I'm really looking forward to I just want free market. I don't want JP Morgan to get busted because that would destroy the entire economic system. They have $50 trillion in derivatives. If they get busted and get destroyed because the CFTC says, hey, you've been rigging the market since at least 2009, you probably cost investors billions and billions of dollars. And oh, by the way, with RICO charges, it's 3 times the amount of penalty. So why don't you pay everybody back, hundreds of billions of ounces? It's ridiculous. That whole game is ridiculous. Right now on the Comex, every single day in the past month, they're trading over 1 billion ounces a day. All of a sudden, it just jumped from a couple 100 million to 1 billion a day. Just the other day, they traded 2 billion, over 2 billion ounces of of electronic derivative contracts on the Comex, and the open interest isn't changing. It's a huge shell game. And if it does end, like Ted believes, and truthfully, I believe too, it's the timing of it's going to come right around 9/11, maybe even into the end of the fiscal year for the United States of America. Because this is big. I mean, this is 150 years of price manipulation coming to an end at some point. It's not going to end the same way it's ended in the past, because as the price rises, and we're already starting to see it, they're not shorting into the rise. Normally, They'll short into the rise and then slam it down, make money going down, make money going up. The big guys aren't doing that. They're panicking. They're closing out positions at a loss. It's unheard of. So this isn't kind of the silver market that we've seen over the past, at least since the invention of computers. When Greenspan invented those first computer programs in the 70s, pretty much everything is changing. And I hope for the better. I really do hope that the regulators and the DOJ and the good guys, as I call them, and maybe even Q is involved. And I know Trump knows what's going on. I really hope they look at this situation in silver and say, oh my God, it has been so destroyed and manipulated over the past 100 years. Let's clean up America. Let's make America great again. And the best way to do that is freely traded markets in a capitalist society. Let's give capitalism a chance for once in human history, because it's never been there. And I think it would be beautiful if we could see something like that. But it won't come without any damage and chaos. So I'm expecting damage and chaos over the next couple months.
Very good. And I have to give credit where credit is due. Bix, last year in September on the private road, you were talking about the fact that something had broken in the market. And of course, a couple of days later, we found out about these reverse repos, and you had plugged the date pretty precisely on
September 11th. Yeah.
Exactly. How does that, and of course on your website, roadtoruder.com, you have the private road subscription. And even this year now, you've been working on this timeline. And I know at the beginning of the year it was a little bit wonky because of all of this information and all this COVID money printing was skewing the data. But are you back on track now? And what do you see in terms of timeline, as you say now, bringing us into September? How does that flow through? And what can you tell the audience here?
Yeah, I would expect to see this latest operation. The operation in 2008 was to take the banks down on September 11th. So they went after the banks on September 11th. Senator, what's his name? Jankorsky or whatever his name was, came out and said, hey, they pulled $500 billion out of the money market fund on September. He said on Thursday, which was September 11th. Right. And we were at the brink of a monetary collapse. We decided to flood the market with cash. I think this time, this operation to take down the banksters started on September 11th, but is growing and is ongoing throughout the entire year. This COVID stuff and all the bullshit these Democrats and the deep state are throwing at us, it's all part of the game. But if we get to September 11th this year, and right around that area, we start seeing silver go up, without the big banksters shorting, we could really easily see silver blowing past $50. It never should have stopped at $50 in 2011. It was all Bill Daley was put there as JP Morgan's henchman at Obama's side, and it was a game about silver's the most important thing. I can look back at almost everything the U.S. does, and it all relates to gold and silver and how they need to keep it under control. So that's where I am right now.
Fascinating. Thank you, Bix, for that and for laying that out for folks. Chris, now, of course, you have a unique bird's-eye view. You've been doing all this research, writing the book, The Big Silver Short. It's available in paper form right now. What's your take in all of this research you've done, and also recently in talking to, I guess, the bullion dealers? What's going on in the market right now? What do you see in terms of supply and demand, and what are these guys telling you?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think we're seeing what people like Bix and David and later on myself have been talking about, that we talked about in the book, because I don't know if I've heard anyone else even offer an explanation, let alone whether it's correct or not. But we saw it take silver 4 years to break $20, and then in a month it went to 29. Down to 25. Now it's normal where 50-cent dollar swings every half hour. I mean, I don't know if let's see if I can pull up real quick the silver chart here today. I mean, it's, I've never seen anything quite like this. And I mean, just here it's 26.40, gaps up 40 cents, then it goes up almost $1, then just gets hammered back down $1. And at least in my study of markets, again, I was trading equity options, running a specialist post back on the New York Stock Exchange in 2009, 2010 when I was first getting into this. And I had a nice position on in 2011. If I'd only been reading the Morgan report back then, maybe the way down would have been somewhere as much fun as the way up. But to me, it made a lot of sense. You had the U.S., Bernanke doing QE2, U.S. getting downgraded, making an ass out of itself in the debt ceiling debacle. Still never cut anything since then. Now they just, ignore the limit for longer chunks at a time. And seeing all that happen, and when silver got up to $49 and then on a Sunday night just dropped $6 in a pop. Again, I think it was helpful that I was working on a trading floor, looking at markets every day. I've never seen another market that reacts like this, that's freely trading. I mean, normally there's a reason for the price to move up or down. And in this case, I would say the reason is this is the effect of the leverage. I don't think markets move like that when you don't have all the things that, we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes here with, bankers stuffing, paper contracts of gold and silver to the degree that it doesn't exist. Bix pointed out it was 2 billion ounces. In a regular year, we only mine around 900 million. And, and that's, of course, this year it's even lower. And maybe one last thought to put it into context. For some reason, I don't know why they show this, but the COT report shows how long or short the 4 largest or 8 largest traders are. And if you do the math right now, at least the report, if you tell me the data is fraudulent, I'd certainly believe that too. But at least as what they're publishing shows that 4 traders, which I assume are banks, are short 244 million ounces of silver. So that means that between 20 and 28, those guys ate a $2 billion loss. Now, whether the Fed just writes them a check out the back door, I know things like that sound extreme. This is why I left Wall Street. I've been stunned at what I saw firsthand. I've been stunned at what I've seen since then. And I think that's what gets lost, where it's like people realize there's money printing, banks cheat, and but I think it's hard for most people to grasp the extent or the degree. But I mean, look at Tesla. Did you know a share of Tesla is more expensive than an ounce of gold? And is it, I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence that last September Tesla was trading $225 a share. And I don't know, it could be a coincidence that right then the Fed swap lines start going. We have unending QE, and now it's up. Company that I think may have one quarter where they actually turned a GAAP profit is up 8-fold since then. So I wonder what would happen, because we talk about what silver or gold might be worth. But what happens if silver and gold ever catch the inflation premium that all of these other markets have? We're living in a world where people call U.S. Treasuries a safe haven, when even aside from the fact that it's a Ponzi scheme, the only reason people are buying it is because they think the Fed's going to come and buy more. That's the definition of a Ponzi scheme. Plus, on top of that, they're already promising you're going to get a negative yield, 0.6% yield with a 2% inflation mandate. So you've almost if I told you couldn't buy gold, silver, mining stocks, or cryptos or something like that, where else are long-term investors supposed to go right now? So I think it's almost, partly by process of elimination. Fortunately, I do think there is a great asset. And, when all that leverage finally gets unwound, my best guess is that even the 4 of us will sit here a year or 2 from now and be like, even as wild as I thought it would be. Again, I'm not telling anyone to go out and buy or do anything, but that's just what my gut has been telling me for the last couple of years.
Very good. Thank you, Chris, for laying that out. As you guys were talking, I had so many points. I'm like, oh my God, this could be a 5-hour show. And I can see all the questions already in the chat. So I'm going to try my best to kind of consolidate these questions and get you started. But before we get to the viewer questions, I had a few already in email from the folks here. And what I'd like to do here is switch segments now and do a roundtable discussion on these specific questions. And the first one was about Scotia. Scotia last week, and let me just bring this up, of course, was fine. I think it was $127 million for precious metal manipulation. And I wanted to get your take on all of that. Of course, we've heard over the last couple of months, JP Morgan also, there's RICO charges, potentially the language have changed. Let's start with you, Bix. What's going on with all of these in your face? Yes, there's proof of manipulation, yet we have all these regulators who've been telling us for 10 years that we were all crazy and that there was no manipulation. Let's start with that a little bit. Let's have a conversation here.
That's the way to say it. I mean, yes, I'm happy that some charges were filed, which is spoofing, which is ridiculous because it was a lot more than spoofing. There was massive collusion, all kinds of issues and laws were broken over the years. But I'm happy about it. But remember, these are crimes that happened years ago, and they should have known it. We all knew it.
Yeah.
And Ted Butler would send them the data that proved it twice a week. He sends twice a week his reports to the CFTC, to JP Morgan, to HSBC. Anybody he accuses of rigging the market, he sends them the raw data from the CFTC and said, where am I wrong? And he hasn't been wrong. Not once has JP Morgan threatened a lawsuit against Ted Butler because he's right. So yes, I'm happy to see it come out in the open. I did expect them to go very light on the banks when they are going to bust them. JP Morgan is obviously the big elephant in the room. They had to throw the RICO charges down at them last year because JP Morgan was going to destroy the system in the repo market. They were all behind that. So they charged them right after that. They charged them with the RICO charges, which is much, much, much bigger penalties. They would have had to pay back 3 times what they stole. And what they stole was 1 billion ounces of physical off the market by shorting the Comex and taking the physical. Now, one might say, well, that's just a smart way to do business, Bix. That's the way our system is set up. Well, it might be, but there's also something in Dodd-Frank called manipulative trading practices that makes it illegal. Right. So it might be smart, but it's still illegal. And I do think we're going to see some charges, not on JP Morgan, the bank, because they haven't even named that bank yet. You can easily find out.
Bank B.
Yeah. There's a bank A, a bank B, a bank C. There's probably a bank every letter of the alphabet. So where do I think we are now? I think we're waiting on the charges to be dropped on JP Morgan. But the key is not, who gets what and who gets what penalty. The key is, what do we get going forward? Do we get the same type of bullshit going forward where they short into the highs to rig the market down and things like that? Or are we going to get a free market value of silver, which would be phenomenal? I mean, understanding what the price of silver in a freely traded market would open the eyes of so many people on the planet to the importance of silver, the value of silver, and the scarcity of silver. So I think that's what we're headed into right now.
Very good. And in that quote on Twitter there, I was saying that these $127 million fines were being split by the DOJ and CFTC. I'm like, yeah, but what about all the silver investors who got wrong by this precious metals manipulation? What are your thoughts on that, David?
Mine? Well, again, I wrote quite a bit in the book about it. I mean, it's been frustrating, to put it in polite terms. And it goes on in all markets. I want to be clear, but, as Ted points out, there's no market that has the amount of stress on it that the silver market does. If you look at oil or soybean meal or even the financials, they don't have the amount of paper versus physical that the silver market has. It's incredible the amount, as we've already discussed. Why is it that if you mine 850 million ounces of silver on an annual basis, and you trade that much every single day, there's no other market that's like that. And so I said, and this is biased, but it's also somewhat verifiable. I think the government cares more about silver than they care about gold. I think they care about both, because if silver took off and gold didn't, everyone would be scratching their heads, or vice versa. So they do travel generally together. There's an 85% correlation to them. It's probably dropped about 80 if we factor in the last 9 years or so. But I think they really do care more about it. I mean, you've never had a strategic gold profile or a stockpile before, but you have had a strategic silver stockpile before. And we may get back to that. So I could talk for hours on it. It's wrong. It's been done through most of history. I mean, as Bix said, probably the last 150 years, it's kind of an almost daily occurrence. That's probably an exaggeration. But only in the old times, when both gold and silver were used as money and money alone before the technological era, they traded pretty much in a free market manner. And then they were regulated and mandated to be at a certain ratio, which of course takes away the free market capability for the market to determine what the correct gold silver ratio is. So I could just go on and I'll stop there.
Okay, you're thinking, and you're probably psychic, because next up I wanted to talk about the stockpiles and the fact that we have this deficit in the mining compared to what we're using in industry, and where is the silver coming from, and is there any left, and at what point does the rubber hit the road here, in getting into that big silver crisis that you were talking about earlier. So we'll get into that in a minute or two. Chris, I want your thoughts on the manipulation. Of course, Scotiabank last week getting their hands slapped, and who's going to pay the fine? Is it the Canadian government that's going to bail them out with our taxpayers' money? Who's paying this? What's going on with that? What are your takes?
Well, it's interesting who's paying it, but perhaps more relevant, I think I saw once that the money does go back to the Treasury, which may as well be the banks at this point. And that's one thing that I've been looking into, at least going to try and help organize for people who want information of how to put in a claim. I don't think this money should go back to another corrupt organization like the Treasury, but to the people, like I believe David said, that have been stolen from. I think a lot of people saw QE2. They bought gold. They bought silver. I think they made a wise choice, and they were cheated. Bart Chilton came out and confirmed it. And to me, it's one of the things that caught my eye early on, like we talked about, or Bix talked about Ted Butler. And I remember when I was starting to study this, and, you had that legendary CFTC meeting. And why did Andrew Maguire sent them a series of emails before a labor report. He told them things were rigged and that this is how it would play out, played out. You can still see it online exactly as he described. And they uninvite him from the meeting. How come they've never contacted Ted? That there's thousands of people that read, and at least they're legitimate questions. Why is the CFTC now? All these guys, the DOJ is getting a guilty plea from. This is all during the time period the CFTC said they were doing an investigation and found nothing. How come they're not commenting? How come we see this on a repeated basis? Here, price gets clobbered with a spike in volume. There it happens again. Here, maybe a little on the way up. So some of these aren't always clear. Although one of the things Andrew Maguire pointed out to the CFTC in advance was that he said, if the number is good for gold, if it's bad for gold and silver, you'll see it drop right away. If it's good for gold and silver, you'll see the price go up first before it gets hammered. We see this day after day. People are losing money. Okay, that's great that you find, Bank of Nova Scotia. Well, how about sending that money to the people who are losing? And could you comment if you're going to delay John Edmonds? That's almost 2 years ago that his plea. We're seeing the same thing happen time and time again. And I guess respectfully, one area where I might disagree with you, Bix. I get it, this whole JP Morgan systemically important, but I say BS on that. I mean, what do they have to start shooting people in the streets before we say enough? And, I don't say this lightly, because I understand that whatever comes after this, maybe there will be an adjustment, But I mean, it's kind of fitting they're being charged with the RICO statute, which is reserved for organized crime. Although, even aside from what we've talked about today, if anybody wants to read J.P. Madoff, credible book by Helen Chapman, talks about how J.P. Morgan, coincidentally the sole banker for Bernie Madoff, which in banking circles, my understanding is that's quite uncommon. Normally you have a syndicate on that type of deal, felony after felony. And then when you look at this dollar system, that allows wars, that allows, the horrific stuff we hear about with some of these political names that we don't need to get into today, but is beyond shocking. Now we have people running for president that do things that I try not to, just take care of myself, but to see some of these things that happen that are facilitated with the dollar, that are financed through these banks. That's why I do what I do. And I think your other guests today as well, where I think silver and why people are so passionate, it represents more than, yes, there's the investment part and it's undervalued and I think it'll go up and then certain investments will do well. But to the degree of, having something honest where it's like, if you want to trade silver, it's like basically you're throwing darts, guessing when some frat boy bankers are going to hammer the market. And that's someone who I've loved studying the markets. I've loved participating, loved learning and discussing it. And it's like instead of government or banks, I just imagine Goodfellas or The Godfather, and that puts it in a lot more context. And perhaps one thing, at least that, sorry for a little bit of a tirade there, but I know this one even flummoxed my friend David Morgan over there a while ago when I found this. I'll pull this up. Just was an interesting note. This is a couple months old, but you see U.S. regulators were probing Scotiabank before this or that. And what I thought was pretty wild is this line here. A U.S. court filing in March shows that Scotia also provided around 800,000 pages of evidence to regulators probing J.P. Morgan's desk. And, perhaps for anyone who says, will the manipulation ever end? Will the governments ever stop doing some of the horrific things like saying they're weapons of mass destruction when they knew they weren't? There's evidence they weren't, which, that seems like murder to me. But keep in mind, people who do stuff like that, there's a little bit of a sociopath mindset, and I would expect they're turning on each other. Bix is a little more in tune with some of the things there going on behind the scenes, but I don't think that's an accident that you see these guys turning on each other. And in the silver market, I think there's going to be some point where it's even bigger than JP Morgan's London whale. And when someone realizes they can put the squeeze on, that's my best guess of how this will end.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. Before we move on, my next point was to talk about fundamentals. And for me, circa 2010 and 11, when I saw some of David Morgan's earlier work on the fundamentals of silver, and he had this mile-long list of reasons why silver was undervalued, and he was already at number 3 or 4, and I'm like, okay, where can I buy silver? Let's get into the strategic reserves. We'll get into the gold to silver ratio here in a moment, and there's a super chat here. Thank you so much to Viking for the super chat. Of course, he's talking about a ratio that he's getting at. I don't know about the 2-to-1, but we'll get into that, so give me a moment here, the Viking. But Bix, I wanted to give you an opportunity to rebuttal some of the Chris's arguments on JP Morgan, if you want to. If not, we can move in right into the fundamentals here.
Yeah, I could crush it real quick.
Okay.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I wish they would throw the book at JP Morgan and force JP Morgan to, one, take all their silver, physical silver that they've accumulated, and give it to people who got harmed. Now, it'd be very difficult to do that. You don't know all the people who got harmed all around the world from what they did. But the biggest problem is you can't take JP Morgan out and not take out everybody's retirement, their checking account, their savings account. The banks are so intertwined. They're called the too big to fail bank because if they do fail, you will see the destruction of all fiat systems around the world. There would be no flowing of anything. Even the communication systems would stop. That's why too big to fail banks aren't allowed to fail. But on the flip side, they should not be allowed to continue to rig markets, continue to do the crimes that they get busted for. So you're absolutely 100% right. JP Morgan should not be in the silver market, the gold market. Well, it's hard with JP Morgan because they rig every market. So we'd have to pull them out of every single market and turn them into what they call a bank, where they lend money to people, which is what they're supposed to be, not a trading behemoth that cheats, lies, and steals.
Okay. Couple of things. Thank you, Bix, for that. So a couple of housekeeping notes here. David has to leave in about 10 minutes. And I know it's a little bit short, and we wanted to have him answer some viewer questions here, but we're doing our best with all the times of everyone, and I want to respect David's time here. Before we go on that, let's get this here. So basically, guys, we mentioned earlier the Silver Manifesto. You can buy that on Amazon or use copies. They're $100, $200, $300 a pop. But you can go to thesilvermanifesto.com. David's reordered another batch, and you can get it there directly at a much, much, much lower price. So I wanted to get that in there. Dave, let's get into this in terms of the fundamentals here. I wanted to get you to talk a little bit about your thoughts on why, again, here now in 2020, what are the fundamentals screaming for the buyers here to get into the silver market? What are your best recommendations here, or best thoughts on what's really happening underlying this whole? You talked about the strategic reserve also, and all of this money printing that's going on right now. Let's touch that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. The silver supply was in a deficit between 1990 and 2006. At the beginning of 1990, there was roughly 2 billion ounces of investment-grade silver. I'm not talking about jewelry. I'm not talking about silverware. I'm not talking about silver art. I'm talking about 1,000-ounce bars, 100-ounce bars, coins, that type of thing. 2 billion ounces. From 1990 to 2006, we took out of the deficit. The only way to make supply and demand equal is to use up the above-ground supply. We got it down to 500 million ounces. So we used 1.5 billion ounces in about 15 years, or roughly 100 million ounces a year. That's a fact. From 2006 to present day, the above ground supply has gone from 500 million ounces back to about 2 to 2.5 billion ounces. However, the holders of that silver has changed quite a bit. Most of it has been held for, you could go through the charts, but 60% is used in industry. Some of that's recycled, about 165 to 200 million ounces a year, depending on which study you look at. Then you have the mine supply, which is in that time gone from 550 million ounces up to 850 million ounces. So a lot of it's still held for long-term investment, and any new investment drives the price far higher. That's why we've seen it go from 20 to 30 already. So what are the fundamentals? The fundamentals are that the more people that realize silver is the most undervalued strategic asset on the planet, and far undervalued till it gets to a fair price of probably 50 in U.S. terms as a bare minimum, you're probably on the side of a real winner for changing your financial future. As far as taking silver to where it potentially can go, it depends on two things: investment demand primarily, but secondly, what could take place in green energy, battery storage, or perhaps even the energy field, which are indeterminable at this time. But once it gets in a certain dynamic, it's going to take a lot to take it down. As Bix alluded to, or perhaps it was Chris or both, the only reason it really stopped at 50 was because the CFTC, I'll be specific, increased the margin requirement 5 times. This is what happened to the palladium market in the early 2000s. They controlled the market by making it more expensive to own a paper contract than the physical metal itself.
Very good. Thank you for that David, I've put up here your website so people can find you at the morganreport.com. Tell the subscribers about your service here, about your newsletter and what they get from that. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask, seeing as I have about 4 minutes left of your time here, I'm going to ask the audience if they have a specific question for David. Please put it in the high caps right now in the chat, and I'll try to get at least one for David before he goes. So tell us about your services here on your website, David.
Yeah, the best place to go is the main website, which is themorganreport.com. You're on the landing page. Over on the right-hand side, you can get the free newsletter, which I do interviews like this. I post them for you directly to your email box, and also the weekly perspective that I give. If you pull down the blog menu, which is the third one from the right, what you'll find is the blog, which I would say is, something for free for everybody. You can see the images there. Most of them are either audio or video interviews. Not always. I'm starting to write more. I'm going to be writing some summary of all these interviews. So when I do an interview like this, I'll put up a summary of it in about 1,500 words. So people that are short on time that prefer to read, I'll providing that for free for everybody. I'll be sending it out to like Bix and Bill Murphy and a lot of the sites that carry written work still. I don't know if Bix does, but I know Bill does. It's a
little dusty with cobwebs, but I do.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we're going to do that. It's an expense to me, but the flow of silver is getting better, so I can afford more out of my pocket. I can't produce the hidden secrets of money. I'm not that well off, but I can get some more written content. So that's it. I suggest you get on the landing page, sign up for free, and then use the blog as a resource for free.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I don't see a specific question for you directly in the chat, but I know Chris has a question.
I have one.
So I'll give it to you, Chris. What's your question for David before he goes?
David, I'm curious. Obviously, you know the history better than anyone, especially of this CFTC. I'm not asking whether it would likely be successful, but do you think there would be grounds to charge the CFTC with a suit to the degree that I believe their budget is $300 million? Not only aren't they doing their job, to me it seems clear that, they're harming people on a daily basis, and I'd be curious if you have any thoughts on that.
I do, but let me correct you as far as knowing the history. I would have to probably say Charles Savoy probably has done more research in the silver history than I have. So let me just shout out to Charlie. But your question is, look, the way it's set up is supposed to be a hedging facility. So if you produce 1 billion ounces of silver in a year, you should really only be able to hedge 1 billion ounces a year, not 1 billion ounces a day. So I think there's everything that a real legal eagle, and I don't have it anymore. I was saving another pile of paper on my desk that's probably 20 years old, but basically a couple of very astute legal types telling me in written form that legally they have standing, but with the way the corruption of the system is, my words, not theirs, is now it's futile to try it because of the paper rush, the backdoor dealings. I don't even know how to frame it. I'll just say it straight out. Because it's so corrupt, it wouldn't go anywhere. But that doesn't mean it won't go anywhere now. And I'm of the old adage, never give up. So yes, you're absolutely correct. They've gone way beyond their own mandate and abused it and abused it and abused it. And I think the right legal team under the right conditions at the right time could definitely have an effect.
Very good. And I have one more question for you, Dave. I see we have 3 minutes left, so I'll try to squeeze this one in. But it was from the original super chat from Josh, who was asking about confiscation. What are your thoughts on confiscation today in 2020? Could that happen?
It could. I wouldn't rule it out. But remember, I don't like, I'm going to use the legal words. It was nationalized. So you were given fiat for it. It wasn't like they took it and didn't compensate. Okay? They compensated you with their paper. They didn't steal it. But in essence, they did. And I don't want to mix metaphors, but basically they gave you, a discount price for it and repriced it later after they obtained it. Will that happen again? I doubt it. I actually envision, particularly in silver, we could see the opposite thing. And very few talk about this. Is this going to happen? I don't know. But let's say it's so strategically vital for, let's say, battery storage for the solar industry. Just throwing out an example. that the government says we will pay you spot price plus, I don't know, $20 an ounce and no tax for anybody that wishes to divest themselves of some of their silver so we can get this new project underway. I mean, the government can do darn near anything, and government is force, and they can force you to do things that you don't want, but they also can mandate things that maybe for some of us might be, I don't know if I do it or not, but I'm just giving you an idea. So no one has ever said, to my knowledge, in public, I've said this privately, that they could go the other way. Like, we'll pay you above spot, and we'll also give you a tax-free status because we need the silver that bad. Could that happen? I think it could. Will it happen? Highly doubtful.
That's interesting. Do you have time for one last question?
I'll do it. I could be a couple of minutes late. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. What about Buffett buying Barrick Gold? What is he signaling by that? And also,
very interesting. I could go a week on that one. One of the first reports I did was Buffett and silver, and I talked about his father being a hard money advocate and how different Warren was than his dad. And then, of course, he really scooped into the silver market 2 times. One that's even a recollection of my memory, but he was sort of pushed out of it by the authorities. And then, of course, back in the early 2000s, where he bought 129.7 million ounces off the Comex, which after they did that, they changed the rules. You can only take delivery of 1,500 contracts, which that's been blown out of the water, as Bix and Craig Hemke have told us, and it's true. So my thought is he sees it for what it is. We're at the end of this fiat experiment again. It's happened over and over again. And whether he wants to admit it or not, whether or not he bought Barrick for the copper, I could care less. He bought it for the gold. He sees what's coming. My question for everybody is, since he's dipped into gold, will he come back into the silver market again? And that's something that we should all be thinking about.
That's very interesting.
Could you imagine him buying some of these junior miners? Like, I'll take that. Bag of chips, and Alexco.
Yeah, he could probably clean up the juniors pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That would be a whole new game out there. Well, thank you so much, David. Guys, Bix and Chris, if you can stay on, we have a few more viewer questions. Thank you so much for that. And I want to thank you, David. We just lost him here. He is quick to go. Thank you so much, David, for being on the show. Really appreciate all your time and your energy today. That was great. Okay, Bix, back to you on this particular question. We wanted to get into the gold to silver ratio. Let's set that up for folks a little bit and tell us why you're so excited about this and where we're going with this.
Well, I'd say the first thing to get your mind around is the manipulation. Is the price real or is it fake? And what applies to silver applies to gold as well, other than silver's kind of on steroids because they need that.
Right.
Gold's on steroids as far as price. And that's where we get this massive disconnect of what a true gold to silver ratio is. Just recently, we hit like 125 to 1, which is obviously so ridiculous the mind can't comprehend it. But in the same breath, 70 to 1 is so ridiculous the mind shouldn't be able to comprehend it. But because they've been rigging the price for so long of silver to suppress it, it seems normal to us. It seems like, oh, boy, that gold silver ratio is really doing well. It's gone from 80 to 70. It should not even be close to this. The gold silver ratio is based on price only. It's not based on supply and demand. It's not based on who wants more of what. It is solely a function of measuring price, one commodity against the other. And when you know that both commodities are rigged, so the price is fake, that means the gold to silver ratio is fake. And it's so important because people invest based off the gold silver ratio. So we're going to get to median after we went off the gold standard. I think the median gold silver ratio price is anywhere from 40 to 50 to 1. We're going to get to that area and people are going to say, oh my God, the ratio is back to normal. We've normalized. And they'll say, oh, you got to sell your silver and buy gold. I'm like, wait. What is normal? What is it based off? Is it based off what we get out of the ground, which is 8 to 1? Mm-hmm. Is it based off above ground silver, which is what 6 billion ounces of silver and 6 billion ounces of gold right now is the estimate. That's 1 to 1.
I hear it's even less than 6 billion of silver. I think I always hear like 2 to 3 even.
Well, that's actually investable silver. Then you got the silverware and your silver watch and all that stuff. So, but I mean, I'm given the benefit of the doubt on all this ratio stuff. But every single metric except the one thing that it's calculated on, which is price. Price is rigged. And I don't know how many times all of us need to scream it. If price is rigged, the ratio is by definition rigged, because that's all they base the price off. So going forward, what does that mean for us? Let's look historically. The price, the gold silver ratio before like the late 1800s was about 15 or 16 to 1. Why? Because that's what they pulled it out of the ground at, and that's what they had sitting around at. It was around 15 or 16 to 1. This is before the industrialization, and we started consuming silver, meaning the amount of silver that we consume is massive. Consuming meaning we break it up into such little parts that we're never going to recycle it. So that's how we get from the overall mining of silver, which is I hear is 60 billion ounces around there? Those who have researched the history of silver. And that's why we have only 6 billion ounces left, is because we've consumed a gigantic chunk. 90% of the silver has been consumed over the last 150 years since we started using silver for something other than money. Before that, it was just money. And then you start checking out, okay, the manipulation. Now, granted, in the late 1900s, you got the Comstock lode, this gigantic mother lode of silver that was found in the Nevada area and up into, I think, Utah. And it's just huge. It's a gigantic lode, and that changed the gold-silver ratio a little. But then you had the gold finds also with the California gold rush. So you get your head spinning on saying, what is it? Where are we? What should the ratio be? Right now, I think the ratio should be at least 1 to 1. At least. If not, better, because I think the industrial users are going to panic, and all they have is money and access to cheap money. So you get companies like Eastman Kodak. You get companies like Dow Chemical. You get companies like Apple Computer thinking, oh, my God, I can't make my product unless I buy, $1 billion worth of silver, and I can get that, no problem, and it would last me for 10 years. So they go in to buy $1 billion worth of physical silver, and they find out, oh, my God, I can't get any physical silver because they aren't trading physical silver, even though 1 billion ounces trades every day on the Comex. So the criminality, and this is what I've been trying to do for the past 20 years of doing this, expose it. It's obvious it should be obvious to everybody. Everybody should be screaming. I can't tell you how many letters I've written to the CFTC, to the SEC, to the government, to JP Morgan. I want everybody to do that. Be an activist. Be a silver knight out there fighting for the cause and bowl down these bastards, because we all know silver is the weak link when it comes to banking. If we can free silver from manipulation, we can take back our country, we can take back our lives, we can take back our monetary system. And it's so important. And you're not helpless in this fight. No, the bad guys are not going to always win. We can win this fight, and it takes educating the world and speaking out and saying, no, this is not how it's supposed to be.
Right. Before I go on here, I'm just cataloging some of the questions from the audience here. How much time do you guys have left, Bix and Chris here? What are we looking at?
We're good.
You're good for a while? Well, this is our job.
I don't have a real job.
How about you, Chris? How much time do you have left?
I got a little while longer, maybe 2:30, 2:45 Denver time.
Yeah, I got that.
Half hour or so.
2:30 a.m. No problem.
Okay, Bix.
I'm taking. I imagine the rest of the day I'll be taking. I think that's great advice, Bix, because. And Jean-Claude, I know you get into the metaphysics a lot, where so much of what we've grown up with in this bizarre planet is based on fear.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of it where people are conditioned to feel powerless, to feel like, well, you can't do this or that. And I think there's a lot to be said for, I mean, I don't know, we're already on the planet anyway, so you may as well, to me, it's more fun to do what you have interest in and believe in. And certainly, again, I think like Bix pointed out, the whole thing with silver, it's kind of seems to me based on like keeping people unaware of what's going on or make them think they're, you know, some alien hunting whack job if they talk about gold or silver. Although what I find interesting, I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks and, you know, I interview different people, and anyone who's like a little bit older has really large sums of money that they've made from investing or running a business. I mean, they all say the same thing. You know, they kind of giggle at how we are in our 20s when, you know, like Bix and I go to like a Wall Street trading desk and, you know, we're capturing the bid-ask spread and think we're geniuses, and then realize as time goes on, you know, these are the same scams have been done before and will be done again. Yet, you know, I found it interesting really when I started interviewing more people, one after another. They're like, the most money I ever made was when I saw something that was undervalued or out of line. It doesn't, I wish I had got his name. There was a great interview I heard yesterday, and he was talking about the metals and saying, you know, I'm okay with buying and having it go down 30%, 50% before it goes up 300, 400%. I think a lot of people struggle to do that. I've struggled with it. I mean, and that's really the challenge in what you're doing with gold and silver. I've been sitting around for 9 years waiting. And I know our friend Bill in the chat there, I think that's who I heard from this morning. You know, I'm a former option trader, and I was making a lot of money when I had that on. So I still do that. Yet I think really the key is having all these things in balance. You know, to some degree, you know, I've shifted my thinking a lot, especially, you know, the process of going from working for a company to starting my own business. You know, a lot of that time was putting the money into that, and, you know, sometimes I had options hoping maybe it'd be nice if silver went up. But if you have a situation where you're making an income and, all right, well, geez, like these bozos are suppressing silver. I mean, it's kind of like the idea of like what we used to think of as saving money in the bank, you know, and I think the more we can shift away from, because I do believe on some level, there's some banker guy out there somewhere that actively is saying, all right, if we get these guys frustrated, panicking, throwing in the towel, or just the cost of being frustrated and upset about this stuff where that throws you off for the rest of your day. By all means, I've lived that. I know every day when I wake up, just remembering, all right, silver is going to go up, it's going to go down, but there's, you know, putting it in context. If they weren't manipulating it, you probably wouldn't have this opportunity. It'd already be a lot higher. So again, similar with what Bix said, you know, it's not the way I design it, but the best that we can say, all right, this is where it is. If you can have patience. If you need money next month, I wouldn't tell you to buy silver. There's better things to do. And I think knowing that going in, if you're going to trade options, understand you're trading a manipulated market, and they can carpet bomb it anytime they feel like. Should the CFTC do this or that? Should the Department of Justice? I'd probably agree with what anybody would say there, yet that's the thing that I learned and took away from the trading floor, is that really the success is distinguishing between what's fair, what we think should happen, and looking at what is going to happen. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
I like there's a saying Greg Manarino says all the time. He says, I have to trade the market that's in front of me. So you guys can talk about all this Lala stuff, but you have to trade what's in front of you. And I think this is what Chris is saying here. Of course, I'm a big silver physical kind of investor kind of guy. And there's a lot of people who are coming in the chat here, and I can tell from the questions, we have people from all walks of life, people who are really, really into this. They know about options and trading. And there are people who are just now starting, which, for example, the question that's on the screen right now, the person is asking, what do you guys recommend? And I know this is not financial advice, but what do you guys recommend for the person who's just starting in terms of investing in their first maybe purchase of physical ounces to get them through to this financial reset? What would you guys answer that? I'll start with you, Bix.
Mortgage the house, mortgage the kids, mortgage the car, mortgage your college tuition, mortgage everything, borrow everything you can get your hands on, and then buy SLV. No, do the exact opposite of what I said.
Right.
You've got some investment. Remember, these are investments. You've got some investment money that you're going to use to invest. Look around at your options. I like silver. I like physical silver in my own possession because I see 150 years of price suppression that's about to end. And I do not want to understate how gigantic that is. There's a reason they've suppressed the price of silver. There are many reasons. We would probably not be living in this high-tech world we live in today without the price suppression, because we wouldn't have all these throwaway TVs and all these things that we think are disposable. We're throwing away a very precious commodity when we throw away an old flat screen TV. There's a quarter of an ounce of silver in a small TV. There's an ounce of silver in a larger TV. There's 2 ounces in a big TV. You got to start thinking differently in a world where the true fair market value of everything is about to be revealed. And that is a really scary thought, because it might be a high, it might be low, it might be, my thought is the stock market should be up in the 1 million, 2 million range. Why? Because they're putting so much money behind the scenes and not telling anybody about it that hyperinflation could hit if things ran smoothly. I don't think it will hit. I think everything's going to just freeze. I think all the computers are going to run into each other one day and just lock up the markets, and then we're going to try to sort things out after that. That's my own personal feeling. I think that would be better than watching the collapse of these big banks, which destroys ma and pa all over the world. But if they do get into trouble that they can't be fixed without completely destroying the system, I think they should be tried. The people should be hung for their crimes, not a penalty, financial penalty, skip the jail route. They should be hung for what they did to my country, a country that claims to be a free market country with free markets for everybody to participate in, but we lie, we cheat, we steal. And that is just abhorrent to everything I stand for and everything my country stands for, and it pisses me off.
Well, there you go. That's honesty for you folks. I wanted to put up in the chat right now, I'm putting a link to that David Morgan first ever video I've ever seen, and it was his 10 rules on investing in silver. So that for the viewer who just asked that question, go see that video. That'll give you some of the answers, of course, from David. How about you, Chris? What would you answer that question?
Well, and actually, let's see. There was another question that came in here that if I could touch on real quick. Jang asked, what is my reference for that statement? I think he was talking about when I said I believe that somewhere along the line, someone is actively trying to get people frustrated. That's my own opinion based on studying how these banks work. I don't have any specific data point, but that's just my personal belief from seeing how much of all these things are set up on. I mean, you have, it's like often like they kind of don't lie. They just like twist the perspective. So it's like, I'd say the Fed openly manipulates the bond market. They just call it policy and, get everybody to sing along and think that's normal. So I'd seen that question. There was another one that I saw someone ask, what does someone consider a large stack? And if I may respectfully suggest, especially, if there's ever been a time not to be worried about what your neighbor is doing, not to be worried about some people have more money than others. Maybe you're in someone's, starting from scratch, it's all going to be different. And I guess back to your original question of what are the different forms, certainly, if you're just starting out, then yeah, I would suggest getting bullion first. There are risks to anything. I saw someone ask, will they tax it? Will they try and confiscate it? My guess is that the governments will try and cheat and steal in any way that they can come up with. I mean, who knew quantitative easing was going to be a thing? Right. Certainly if you go to the mining stocks, I mean, you can certainly make a great case that you'll get leverage and a higher rate of return on a big move. Bix points out often the risk there. Could they nationalize? I think they'll definitely think about it. Just any way they can steal money. Although there is that consequence where if the government nationalized all the silver mines, like then all the silver miners would be out of business pretty quick, and you'd have an even bigger silver deficit. So I mean, it's kind of like there's, and I've felt that way at times where it's like, geez, I mean, is there any limits to what these guys can do? Yet there are some market restraints. So will they try that? I think it's something to keep in mind. And that's why there's a difference between silver and mining stocks. I'm aware of those risks. I have an investment background and I choose what I'm willing to handle. That's going to be different for everyone. By all means, I talk about options sometime because that's been a big part of my background in my life. But by all means, that's not appropriate for most people. And the simple way is just, if you have silver in a place that you feel is safe, that is the most conservative. And if you do that, you're going to be in great shape. Maybe one last thought. I know some people say if you don't hold it, you don't own it. I think there's a lot of credence to that. At the same time, maybe if you love talking about silver and you have let's say you saved $10 million of silver, would I want that all in my basement, even with the safe? So I think, if there's one thing I'm learning is the diversification. And I think any ways you can diversify things can be a good thing. And there's different risks to all of them. So it's going to be different for each person, but hopefully that at least gives a couple things to think about and how to figure out what's right for you.
Very good. Thank you for that, Chris. There was a comment from SB saying that the psychic silver cavalry was going to confiscate all the physical on the planet. Yes, keep buying, guys. Keep getting that physical. I put up this poster here because, of course, this was a really fascinating interview where we got into the metaphysical part of silver and why and how it's going to play a big role in this new world that we're going into. So if you guys haven't seen that, it was on Thursday, August 13, and you can find that on my YouTube channel. The other last question I have for you guys, and it leads into this here, is sci-fi world. And I was very interested this morning. Let me see if I can bring this up. I saw something in the Globe and Mail, Canadian newspaper, that Canada basically was petitioning the UN for a treaty on space mining. So let me see if I can bring that up. Yeah, global space mining. There you go.
The only thing I'd like to comment on there is there's 2.4 trillion tons of gold in the sun. 2.4 trillion tons of gold in the sun. And the sun is seeding gold throughout the universe. So you could go mine the sun and get a little bit of gold there. Oh, JC, are you frozen? Oh, he is.
Well, he's frozen. Bix, I guess the other thing that comes to mind.
Wait, he might be just in shock after the 2.4 trillion.
Yeah. I mean, it isn't it incredible the ideas that these people come up with to spend other people's money that they don't have. I mean, the things the U.S. government is. How about stop spending other people's money?
Agreed. Yes. I mean, but then again, it gets to the Road to Ruta stuff. It was the plan all along to print as much money as possible, print money to infinity to destroy the system. They gave up the whole fake, I'm going to balance the budget, I'm going to get the overspending in line. That's gone. And that was always the plan. Spend as much money as you can, build up your inventory, build up your military, build the houses, spend until people stop accepting fiat. And that's also why they hide all this gold in the Grand Canyon, in the desert wildlife preserves, and in the Arctic, all kinds of oil in the Arctic. Use everybody else's first while they're accepting these electronic fiat money. And then once that all falls apart, boom, you're set. You can restart your economy.
Yeah, and Bix, what is Jean-Claude? I was filling in as host for a moment.
He was really good.
What is your take? I've gone back and forth on the whole Q Trump is, going to save us, and he's taking us back to the gold standard, which, it's like then I'll hear someone talk out of left field. He's doing a press conference, and he has two Navy generals pull some girl who's been living in a cage for the last year. And so it's like you see parts of it. I'm sure CNN isn't going to tell us, what's really going on. I've followed lightly the Q thing. I remember there was a Q message that interest rates were going to get raised last March, and I've never heard anyone explain, because that certainly didn't happen. It's hard to know what to think about Trump. Bix, your video on that Chris Giancarlo thing, by the way, was incredible. I remember, and just so you know that you do a very important service in the world, I was pretty darn ticked off, and it was just like hearing someone put that in that context. I think that's the value of what you do. And Chris Giancarlo saying they took action to pop the first bubble since 2008. Did they not watch Trump's campaign where he called it the big, fat, ugly bubble fueled by the Federal Reserve to prop up the Democrats? So, and now he's out there like literally begging for negative interest rates. So, I guess, I mean, he's clearly not telling the truth on one of those. He said A and B, I guess certainly in my mind, there's a great chance that it could be that and I wonder sometimes if he maybe planned that in the beginning and then someone corrupted him along the way. But it's like easier for me to believe either he's a corrupted guy or he's the greatest hero on the earth than that he believes that the stock market's a bubble and now wants negative interest rates. Where are you at on that these days? And Jean-Claude, if you have any thoughts there as well.
You're on mute. Jean-Claude, you're on mute. Okay.
I'll bet whatever he said was brilliant, though.
It must have been funny. He's laughing.
He knows the answer.
I said I lived for 2 minutes, and you guys are already commandeering my show talking about Trump.
I can answer it quickly.
Okay, go ahead, Ed.
Yes, I do believe the Q movement is absolutely real. Not all the information that comes out, it's fluid too. I mean, we have free will in living this existence. So nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. So Q predicting something beforehand, things change, which is, thank God for that. If everything was already set, why the hell are we here in the first place? But yes, Trump is working with, I just wish that we all knew what Trump was doing in the background. And he's brilliant. He's powerful. He's the bull in the china shop that they put there. I voted for Ron Paul 3 times for president because I believed in his ideals and in him as a person. But he could have never done this. He could have never been this kind of, because they'll go after you with everything they have. And they clearly are doing that with Trump. So the only thing I'm pissed off at Trump, but I know why he's doing it, I'm pissed off that he continues to rig the market, claiming that, we have the greatest economy in the world. We have the greatest rig job in the world is what we have. But I also understand that in order to take down this massive corrupt pedophile / market rigging / trying to kill us, spreading viruses and diseases web of human beings throughout every function of government within the United States and around the world, in order to get rid of that, he's got to keep the system going for a little while longer. Because if he came back and said, okay, no more market rigging, boom, everything would be collapsed. Most likely the bad guys would have instantly taken over power again, saying, that's my take. Now, is it correct? I think it is, and I think it's proving out. I think ultimately when we look back at history, a lot will be revealed about what was going on behind the scenes. There's some great videos right now of Trump going to Saudi Arabia, to China, to Russia, to the G5, G20, and saying, here's the deal. Here's what you're going to do, and you're not going to tell anybody about it. We're taking you out. And by the way, you're not allowed to say anything about it. I think there's been a lot of executions, shall we say, military executions done of these criminals who are like Hillary Clinton comes on to speak. It didn't even look like the same person, not even close. It looks like a 30-year younger version of Hillary Clinton. So there's all kinds of weird things going on that front. There's these deep fake things that you can like pretend you're somebody else on a video, and with computer graphics, it looks like them talking. So yeah, we're right in the middle of all this crap. But I do have faith that we can. It's not Q is us. Q is all of us. Q is the silver bugs. Q is the gold bugs. Q is the military. Q is everyone in the world who is fighting for truth, honesty, and freedom. So I wouldn't say it's just one group. I think we're doing our part here with silver, and I think it's a very, very important part because of the Achilles heel of the bank is silver, and I truly believe that, and we'll see what happens.
Ivar is making a good point here. He says, got to watch the JC and Jim Willie interview. Yeah, Jim was talking about Q as being a military junta, basically running the show and having Trump basically just the spokesperson. So if you haven't seen that interview, that's from last Friday. Go ahead and check that out. But thank you, Ivar, for bringing that up. Guys, just before I lost power here with the storm, I was trying to set up a conversation on space mining, and you went to get it. Did you guys talk about that? Or let's just move on to the show.
We kind of covered it.
Okay. All right.
That's fine. Whatever you want to do.
No. I think we should close now. I think we're getting on the timeline here for Chris. So, Chris, actually, let's do this way. I'd like to give both of you the last words here as you've listened to the conversations today, David Morgan's take on stuff, and saw the viewer questions here. Is there anything that you would like to leave the viewers with in terms of optimism, and also let them know where they can reach you and where can they support you? So let's start with you, Chris, and don't forget to mention also the Silverfest one more time. So let's start with you, Chris.
Sure. I actually really agree with what Bix was saying about how I don't think the ending is written yet, and that people do have power to do something about that. It's been pretty encouraging to me. I put out the book, The Big Silver Short, which I think at least the information is there for people that want to read it and see how this stuff is laid out. I think it's great that Jean-Claude, I appreciate these roundtables you're doing, where to me it always seemed like a matter of time. If you get enough investors or funds that have a large enough amount of capital, I imagine the government will try and block that in every way they can. But eventually, in my experience, the market nature is always bigger. So laid that out in the Big Silver Short. We will be hosting Silverfest September 11th to 13th. Bix is going to be there. Jean-Claude, hopefully you will be there as well. David Morgan's going to be speaking a bunch. And for anyone who's been feeling kind of like a lone wolf in their village and wanting to meet and interact with other people, it will be online, but there will be video booths for friends, partners, investors, or whatever it is that you're interested in doing. And know that you don't have to feel alone out there. And I think there's never been a more exciting time where you can actually make an impact in what's going on.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. And of course, everyone, you can follow Chris at arcadiaeconomics.com. You can find them on YouTube and on Twitter. And of course, the book is now available in paperback. So thank you, Chris. How about you, Bix? What do you want to leave with the folks today?
This was a great conversation. Chris and David both have great books that could change the world if everybody in the world read them or listened to them. So definitely get a copy of Chris's book. Definitely I like the audio version. Definitely, I'm an audio. I can't read anymore. I'm an audio.
Me too. Yeah.
David Morgan's first book is what I read 20 years ago. And if anybody's new to silver or has only been in silver for, a couple of years, you got to start with the basics. And David's first book was like mind shattering how many different reasons there are to buy silver. Fundamental reasons, not just because it's low in price.
Right.
So definitely get that book as well. And then go to roadtoruta.com for all your conspiracy favorites. And we're doing it every day. It's so exciting right now in the silver market. This is I've never, 20 years doing this, I've never felt as excited about our potential to take down the criminal cabal. And I just hope everybody's on board and with positive intentions going down this road, because this is the promised land. This leads us to free markets, and the only way we can be free human beings is with free markets.
Very good. And one last question, I can't help. Bill is asking, Chris, Jean, or Bix, silver prediction for silver. I'll start with you, Bix. What do you think?
Sure. I think nothing but sunshine and roses and happiness. I think we'll break through $30 by the end of September, probably break through 50 in October, and then through 100 by November, and then 500 by the end of the year.
Wow. Okay, that's very good. Very good. How about you, Chris?
That works for me.
Yeah.
I think that's all possible. I guess depends on when the Comex finally breaks. So I would imagine maybe, again, my background's an option trader, so we were trained to look in terms of probability. Maybe there's an 80 or 90% chance it's 25 to $30 by September. But whatever that other remaining probability is, that, you know, maybe the September deliveries are the knockout blow. The main point of the book, and that I would maintain now, is that there's going to be some point where there's a big gap higher, even more so than what we just saw over the last month. So likely around $30, but one of these days we're going to see a big gap, is my belief.
And as far as I'm concerned, go ahead, Bix.
Chris, once we hit 50 and say we blow by 50, is there any resistance anywhere in the world? Because silver has never been above $50. Mm-hmm. Where do we go if we bust out of 50 and we're looking around and we're silver and going, okay, where's my fair market value? Who in their right mind would sell silver?
Yeah.
I mean, a mining company, they only make 850 million ounces a year, and there's going to be and most of it's going to be soaked up by industrial buyers who are panicking. I don't know anybody who would sell silver. I don't know. After $50, it's like game on or game over. It's probably game over, and then a new game starts trying to find fair market value. Where do you think fair market value is?
I think it's going to be quite a bit higher. I've always phrased things going back to 2011. If the only reason it came down then was because they sold all that paper silver, the book was almost an attempt to disprove that.
Wait, that was only 1 billion ounces back then. Do you remember that? Now they're selling 1 billion a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you talked about how we had silver hit $50 in 1980, hit $50 again in 2011. I have some mixed views. I'm not a technical chartist. I have some mixed views on the science of it, but to the degree that there are a lot of people that subscribe to it and are investing money based off of that. In the same way, when we saw silver finally broke through 20, I have been thinking about what you asked, Bix, where it's like, once it finally breaks through, and especially in this world where everyone likes to invest on momentum, I think we'll see. The Fed's guaranteeing we're going to see silly numbers at some point, because the one thing that we can say with certainty is that the Fed is just going to keep printing. I don't see any way that ever changes. So, there will be some point, when we see silly numbers, but, the slice of pizza is $100. But even outside of that, I think to unwind that leverage, you're going to be looking at a price north of $100.
Very interesting. For me, what I was talking, I would tend to agree with Jim Willey in the interview the other day. He was talking about, of course, all things being equal and stable the way they're going now, we would do 30 first, then 50, and then maybe 75 by the end of the year. But that's presuming there's no big hiccups at the Comex or a huge upset in the election or who knows what, asteroids hitting the planet. Like all these psychics are seeing really, really weird stuff coming up this fall, which of course would be a game changer for all of this conversation. So regardless of the price, it's going to be multiples higher of what it is now in the fall. So that's my take. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this show. Really appreciate your time, Bix. Chris, thank you so much. You guys are gentlemen. We have fun every time you guys are on. And of course, I want to thank all the new subscribers on the YouTube channel. I just hit 7,000 subscribers a couple of nights ago. That was one of my milestones, so it's a lucky number for me. So thank you so much, everyone, for subscribing. And I see a lot of new faces here. So please, if you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. All my shows are live. And of course, please do go and support these two gentlemen here for all the work that they do. They bring a lot of information to light, and they've been fighting this fight for a long time. And it's because of people like Chris and Bix that, people are waking up, and it's time. As Bix says now, you're lucky to see 150 years or almost 200 years of manipulation coming to an end. We're at a very strategic time in our lives, and the people who are taking the right decisions now for their livelihood are going to be way in advance of everybody who's still sucking the teeth to the nanny state and CNN News. So, of course, go support these guys. At roadtoruta.com, you can find Bix. And, of course, at arcadiaeconomics.com, you can find our friend Chris Marcus. So, everyone, thank you so much for being on the show. I love you, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thanks, guys. So that is tonight's show. Do make sure you go check out Jean-Claude's Beyond Mystic. Gets into a lot of cool stuff, and it's a fun show he has there. And actually, we'll be doing more of these silver calls. I believe next one is with Bix and Sean from SGT Report. Then we're going to be bringing Andy Schechtman in. So a lot of good stuff. And in case you missed last night's call with great Andy Schechtman of Miles Franklin, well, that one is coming your way now.